Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our Abundance webinar series, webinar number 2. Tonight, we are going to be talking about how you and you alone make up everything. My name is Randy Tate, and with me tonight is my partner, Elizabeth Pitt.
Hi, everybody.
So welcome to the webinar. As we get going and start talking about tonight's conversation, I want to take a moment first and make sure we're properly introduced so that all of you know who is speaking to you. With me tonight is Elizabeth Pitt, I proclaim her the abundance master. And if you're talking about a top-notch world-class executive at leading companies like Intuit or Infusionsoft, or coaching executives, or just being an entrepreneur, building small businesses and multiple streams of revenue, Elizabeth Pitt is a master of all of those. And when we say abundance master, it's not just about business and work. She's a master of her health, and she's just an abundance master around pure joy. She creates it better than anybody I've ever met.
Oh, thanks, Randy. That's a very nice thing for you to say. You know, Randy and I connected on the understanding that we wanted to have big lives and abundant lives that were orchestrated the way we wanted them. It was interesting to find out Randy's history. He was a high school teacher and athletic coach of wrestling and football. And as he realized that there was a limited financial upside for him there, he took his expertise and he founded his own sporting apparel company and sold into other coaches. And he grew that business to $5 million, sold it to publicly traded Sports Chalet, and then embarked on a mission to teach other entrepreneurs all of the things he had learned the hard way. And so that pursuit led us to understand that we both are very committed to living full, abundant lives and to doing what it takes to live joyfully every day.
Yeah, when we started to really resonate on that, mission and who we were and what we do, that's when we formed Growth Choice. And a few years ago, we were sitting in a park, having some conversations about our mission, what we wanted to do in the world. This mission came to light, and it is to change what 1 million people believe is possible for themselves and their lives.
Yeah, and this is such a heartfelt endeavor for both of us. We know what we're doing for the rest of our lives. We want to help people look inside and see who they came down here to be and what they wanted to experience. And so we want to line ourselves up to people who want big, abundant lives. We know if you're on this webinar, you're one of those people. And so we'll do our best to serve you tonight and to help you see something new about what's possible for you.
That is the intent, and I have no doubt we will deliver it. So as we start this webinar, like we start all of them once we've introduced ourselves, get people to know what we're doing here, we want to talk about the abundance game. What you're seeing here on the background is just a basic outline of the first part of the game. Last week we spoke about our awe-inspiring mission, and we really looked at it from an emotional standpoint, how our emotions guide us to where we want to go. This week, we're going to talk about the awe-inspiring mission and what we're doing in life and how it's all made up, and we get to make it up.
That's right. We know that joyfulness is the sign that we're on the road to abundance. And we talked about how our awe-inspiring mission definitely has to create positive emotion. What's really freeing about your awe-inspiring mission, and this takes a little mastery, is it will be as unique as your own thumbprint. So you might borrow language from somebody, or you might be dancing on the same thing you want to do as someone else. But ultimately, when you get your awe-inspiring mission correct for you, it's as unique as you are, as unique as your life purpose is. And so when Randy and I say we want to change what 1 million people believe is possible for themselves and their lives, there are people who say, that's crazy, 1 million people, how are you going to do that? Well, how do you know you changed what's possible for them? How are you going to measure that? Well, that's pretty lofty. Yeah, okay, got it. But when Randy and I locked eyes after we were working at a whiteboard and we discovered that that's what we were up to, we knew it like you just know it. Like you're a kid creating a new game, and it's the game that everybody wants to play because there's just something cool about it. And so then that's what's interesting about It's All Made Up. Your awe-inspiring mission has to resonate for you and for you alone, and it has to emotionally connect for you. And those two things together make it very attractive to other people. So we're going to encourage you to take all of the chains off to get into your place of being creative and making things up for this webinar.
Yeah, and we want to make sure that you understand this is not the entire game what you're looking at. This is a piece of it. Every webinar, we will layer on more pieces of the abundance game, which will become your own abundance game. So as we go through this series, we want to encourage you to, add to yours each time as we go through it. So as we mentioned, our conversation this week is we're talking about how everything is all made up and how most people behave as though there's a world out there to be found or discovered. So they have to go find it, and that life just happens to them. But we know that human beings are generative. They create the world they live in. They create new things that have never existed before. And the circumstances you're experiencing are the ones you yourself have created.
Yeah, and it's interesting to this, Randy, because it can feel like you're just reacting to things that are coming at you. But it's really imperative to be present. Like you rented the apartment you rented. Yes, someone else lived in that apartment, but then you decorated it how you decorated it, and you're inviting over the people that you're inviting over. Maybe you fight with them, maybe you laugh with them, maybe you sing with them, maybe you eat with them, who knows? Whatever it is that you're doing with those people in that place that you decorated, you're generating it all. And by the way, the energy you use to decorate your apartment, if you said, who cares about that? Nobody even cares about that. You're going to have an apartment that has nobody cares about it decor. If you say, I want my friends to come over and just feel like mi casa, su casa, you're going to have a very different decor. And so how you're being and what you're thinking and your relationship to making it up is reflected in everything you're doing. You're creating whether or not you want to admit it.
Absolutely. And when we don't like what we're experiencing, that's when we start to really feel like it's happening to us, and we can become victim-y, like, oh, poor me, the world's getting after me, I'm having a bad day, the world's after me. We just want you to consider that you are causing the matter for all things you.
That's right. There can be surprises in life. There can be things, and by the way, surprises are fantastic because there's as many good surprises as there are quote unquote bad surprises. But the surprises do happen, and sometimes we don't have the understanding or wisdom as to why something's appearing in our life, but we certainly do have the creative power to decide if we're even going to acknowledge it, if we're going to play with it, if we're going to allow it into our game. Just because someone calls us up and wants to have an argument with us on the phone, like we don't have to have that conversation. So surprise, mom calls up and she wants to take issue with something she saw you post on Facebook. You don't need to take her call. It's really that simple. And so then this is the part where, yes, there are other creators. We'll talk about this in a moment. There are other people in the world. They may be generating things that kind of bump into your creation. But ultimately, you do have choice unto whether or not you allow it into your creation or you just decline to play with other things that are happening. And so that's where this notion of when you think it's happening to you, press pause and really hear what we're saying. You're creative and generating at all moments, even with the things that you're not that fond of.
And when we figure that out, and when I say we, I mean all of us, when we become crystal clear that we quite literally are the creator of the game, we get to make up all the rules, we get to do all the judging, we are the umpire. The game is made up by us. We make the rules. So as Elizabeth said, we can choose to take that call from mom or not.
That's right. And by the way, whatever mom took issue with on Facebook, if you didn't, you're the judge, right? So when we allow other people's assessments or standards or ways of looking at the world to impose themselves on ours, we're not making the game up anymore. We're actually accepting someone else's rules for the game that we get to be in charge of. Why would we do that? We get to pick. We're the umpire. We're the judge of our own life and how it goes and what works and doesn't work for us. And so, again, you're dancing with other people. We want you to draw right into yourself, into your own reserve of resourcefulness and creativity. You really do get to say how it goes.
My favorite example of this, and for all of you listening, if you are curious and say, how does that work, Randy, Elizabeth? I don't understand. That doesn't make sense. How do I get to make up the rules? Think about a 5 or 6-year-old kid. Play a game of checkers or play a game of jump rope or hopscotch and watch how fast they change the rules.
Oh yeah. You've got so many boxes on a hopscotch and they're drawing new boxes and then there's a circle over here and now they're playing with rocks or sticks and they're having a point scoring system that's not even the point of hopscotch. And then you say to them, that's not how hopscotch works. And they say, I don't care. I want to play this new game that I'm playing. And you got a choice at that point, right? It's so compelling because they say, if you would like to play with me, I'm not inclined to play by those rules, but I do want to play. How about we play something else? And I'm telling you, those little ones, there's so much to learn from the way that they understand, Randy. They aren't bound by the fact that they're not in charge. They believe that they have the power to change the rules. No, it doesn't occur to them that they have to play the hopscotch rules. Maybe they will, but maybe they won't, and they're not as charged up about it. As we get older and people impose rules in school, in church, in jobs on us, that starts to become the way it is. But remember back to being 5, 6, 7 years old, the freedom you had to change the rules and to make it up whenever you felt like it.
Yeah, and it's always good to touch base with one of those little guys
With one of the little
if
ones.
you really need to get some clarity around it.
That's right.
And so we talk about creating as a practice. And we've been practicing this since we changed the rules of hopscotch. That's when we started. And we continue as we go through life to grow and change with our creations and our creativity. Think about things you did 10 years ago and the way in which you did them that were difficult that now seem easy. And you can think about all the ways you've created as you've gone through your life up till this point.
That's right. I like to think about 10 years ago, planning an international trip felt a lot more daunting to me. And now it's like, no problem, or changing a plane flight or missing a plane flight. And now it's just like, I've taken so many plane flights that I'm like, if I miss it, I know when there'll be another one and when there won't. I know how to adjust to be there on time. And I have no stress or worry in the area of travel the way that I used to 10 years ago. Same thing, having a tough conversation with someone. I have so many more skills now to open up a tough conversation and to have it in a place of safety. Whereas 10 years ago, I would be a ball of nerves even trying to have a tough conversation. And so now I think about the things today I take for granted that were hard for me even 10 years ago.
Yeah, and take a second, Elizabeth, and talk about the difference in just rote memory and rote random learning and being able to regurgitate somebody else's creation versus owning your own.
That's a really interesting one, Randy. I think that it's very tempting to be growing according to someone else's checklist or agenda. So there are milestones. For example, if you want to be a superintendent of schools or you want to be a business person or a corporate leader, there are boxes that you check and roadmaps that you follow. What's interesting about those is, again, like we were talking about before, they tend to be imposed on us by someone else. You are learning when you do those things. And those of us who will transition into creating our own life will be grateful for those skills that we acquired. But you're not acquiring them with the same passion and with the same growth and with the same freedom as you do once you make a shift and understand that you're truly creating. That's ultimately what this slide is about. Your creations are progressing, even if they were dictated maybe by someone else's agenda or rules in the past. 10 years ago, I didn't have the wisdom around creating that I do today, and I'm still better at some things. But now we want to invite people to fast forward 10 years. If you start to really embrace your creative power, like really embrace it, the way Randy and I have, the way that makes us bold enough to say that we're going to change what 1 million people believe is possible for themselves and their lives. And that's the truth for us. That's what we're committed to. With the awareness that we can be bold that way, the next 10 years looks pretty different.
Yes.
And the things that we would create and the things that we're planning to experience is going to look very different from the wisdom that we're in the driver's seat to create.
Yeah, so what we'd like you to do right now, and I'm going to give you 1 minute of semi-silence to do this. I want you, in a minute will seem like a long time, but just go with it. Think about the ideal day in your life 10 years from now. What will it look like? What will it be? And with no restrictions, no limitations, the best, most perfect, ideal day you could ever have. Ready? Go.
And Randy was saying semi-silent. For some of us, we can't even imagine what that would be like. So I would encourage you to say, just go into your mind's eye where the knowing is about the things you'd like to experience. What's one thing in this perfect day that you know you're going to be experiencing? Are you golfing? Are you by the ocean listening to the waves? Are you scuba diving? Are you climbing in the mountains? What are you doing? Where are you? Who's around you? How are you feeling inside to be in this perfect life? What kind of thoughts are you having about the money you have, about the health you have, about the life you get to lead? What's happening for you in that perfect day that you don't even allow yourself to consider today because you're not fully embracing that it's all made up and you get to create it?
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. That place you're at right now. So as we go on our way and as we're creating that life and moving towards that, we want you to be cognizant of a couple of things. First is that other people are actually creating too. You're not the only one creating. And we want you to realize that just because somebody doesn't do exactly what you want and you're like, but I was creating that experience with them. Well, we want to provide them the space for their creations as well.
I think that's right. I think that when you're surrounded by 7 billion other creators, that can be a very difficult thing to get your head around. It starts to be like, well, is it going to be your way or my way? Your way or my way? We can, sense that resistance and that tension that your creation and my creation aren't aligning. And this is what's interesting. As you become fully embracing of your creative power, you'll start understanding the notion of something called co-creation. If somebody wants to play with you, and you've got to ask yourself the question, do you want to play with me? Because if they don't, I mean, what's the point? If they do want to play with you, there's something they're wanting to experience in their game that they're creating, and there's something that you're wanting to experience. And together, if you open up that space, nobody's in tension with each other. Nobody wants to be right. Nobody wants to be the dominator and I'm the king and you've got to do what I say, because those games aren't co-creative. They're dominating games. And what they do is discount the creativity of one of the two participants. And that participant usually gets resentment. It gets resentment about that, about having to be doing something they don't want to do. And we talk about that in later webinars. But ultimately, if you are wanting to invite others into your creation and you see people who aren't lining up with your creation, you have to acknowledge they're creating too. And then there's a process for opening up the space for co-creation. Hey, you want to play with me? I want to play with you, right? They say right. And then you explore how do my creation and your creation intersect? Just like a Venn diagram. It's very unusual that two people have two circles where there's no overlap between them. Most people have a space between them where they have shared interests that they want to accomplish. And that's the notion of really powerfully co-creating with other people. And so, this is where you experience resistance when you're saying this is happening to me. That's where you see other people are creating. And number one, are you accepting their creation as yours? Because then that's how you're using your creativity. It's just to participate in their game, even if you don't want to. And are you inviting them to co-create with you? Are you honoring your own creative power and genius and requiring that this game be satisfying to both of you? Again, these are advanced mastery principles. We go through them in other webinars, and we certainly go through them in our Abundance Fundamentals retreat, which we'll talk about in a minute. But it's really exciting to think about all of the things you used to consider to be resistance and blockage and other people who are hard to play with. You actually can be in a place where you joyfully create. And there's 7 billion people to play with. So if the ones you're trying to play with don't want to play with you, no worry. There's 7 billion other creators who like the games that you're up to.
Yeah, there's no shortage of people.
There's no shortage of people. It's so exciting.
And yeah, so as we think about that from the perspective of I'm annoyed or I'm frustrated because that other person did something, or because the world is happening to me, we want you to just take a minute and consider, being a little patient and really reflecting on some of the times where you've been in that space of, oh, poor me, the world is happening to me, and we start to create from that place when we're creating from impatience and frustration.
I love this, Randy. Because when we think about being impatient and this situation's happening to me, so I'll show them, I'll fix their wagon, and now I'm spurred into action and I'm crusading. That is a counterfeit of creativity. Think about creating. Think about creating, if you're playing an instrument, for those of you who play instruments, or if you're drawing or writing or solving problems or doing math or doing a cryptogram puzzle. All of those are forms of creation. And when people talk about creating, about that type of energy, they talk about losing track of time completely. They talk about being fully present in the moment that they're in. And we want to submit to you that your genius and your creativity is supported by that feeling of I have all the time in the world, and it's diminished when you're coming from impatience, because impatience just means you're feeling time scarcity, right? Impatience is time scarcity. So there's no way for impatient creation to be abundance, because it's by definition scarce. You're making time too scarce for what you want to do. We want you to consider that everything's happening in perfect time always, and that there is no cause to have the kinds of anxiety that then cause us to create things we don't like and we just have to clean up later.
Yeah, and if you're struggling with this at all, just think of a time where you've taken action from a place of anger or frustration, and how'd that work out for you? And
it typically makes the problem worse, is what I find. And then now I have to apologize to everybody for those words I was using that were not exactly what I meant to communicate. And so I try to take a deep breath, remind myself that it's all perfect, and remind myself that I'm a powerful creator. It's so interesting, the conversations that come from that place than the ones that come right after I'm stimulated to be angry or frustrated.
yeah, you definitely are well served by providing a little space between your reactions to any stimulus whatsoever. And so as we think about that, we want you to take the next step in this thought process, that any situation coming at you can seem real, but at any point we have the option to literally just whitewash the canvas, start painting from a clean slate instead of just accepting what is.
Yeah, that's a really important distinction, Randy. If the words on the slide in front of you are you creating deliberately or by default? Default means you just accept that things are coming at you. You just accept that your landlord charged you a late fee for your rent when you mailed the mail on time, but they picked it up late. You know what? You don't have to accept that. You can co-create a different answer. You can choose to pay the late fee, but get something fixed in the apartment that you forgot to request last time. At any point in time, things coming at us can be something we just accept blindly as though we have no power over it, or we can whitewash the situation and deliberately create what we'd like to experience. And if we're very powerful at enrolling other people, and that's another part of creating, it's part of the abundance game. We talk in depth about enrollment at the Abundance Fundamentals retreat, where it is really important that you have this emotionally connected aim, and it is made up by you, and it's attractive, and you enroll other people. It's interesting that someone can be coming at you with a situation, and they may be trying to steamroll it right past you, because most of the time people don't choose to embrace their creative power and say, I decline to play that with you. But here's another game that I love to play. That's what we talk about when you whitewash the canvas. You don't have to accept the picture that's on the page at any point in time. And with great enrollment, again, we talk about this in the Abundance Fundamentals retreat as part of your abundance game. You can enroll other creators to add their creative genius to yours in a way that's very open, and that they feel the self-expression of playing with you. And then it becomes really powerful. But again, you have to realize that you're the powerful creator that you are, and that it's all made up, either if you're accepting it or you're putting your own creative genius out there and asking people to follow you with theirs.
Yeah, and one last way to maybe state that a different way is you don't get to choose to not create. You are either doing it deliberately, or it's going to happen either way.
That's right.
You can't opt out.
You can't opt it out. You are generating. So we say use that power to have the things that you would like to experience and to decline to play the games that you're not interested in. And that is not what teachers tell us, parents tell us, bosses tell us, because they would love us to just happily skip through their game without questioning. It's actually very useful when we don't understand how creative we are for people who want to dominate us into their games, and they don't really acknowledge that we're sitting here creating too. So anyway, we get a chuckle out of this because you can hear in our laughter, there's so much freedom in embracing who you are as a creator. And this is what we love about the abundance game.
And so we want to take the last couple of minutes here and talk to you guys about what we have coming up in September. It is our next fundamentals retreat, and it is in San Diego, as always, on San Diego Harbor. And during those 3 days, we just barely cover on this webinar the things that you're going to be talking about learning. You're going to build your own abundance game. And as we explain some of these concepts and thoughts and talk about this a little bit, I just want you to ask yourself the question, do you have, by your own definition, enough money, enough love? Would you like more time? Do you have all the joy in life you want? And those are the things we want you to consider, because those are the things you will discover.
Yes, as Randy and I teach the abundance game, people are creating in every domain of their life. They're creating in relationship, in family, in health. The rules of the abundance game are the same, but the domains can be different. And so any of those areas where you would like to be experiencing more connection, more joy, more confidence, that you are at the helm and that you're creating the life of your dreams. And this can be in your most intimate love relationships. It can be with your family and all the crazy family history that you may be experiencing. It can be in the area of money. It can be in the area of your soul's mission or your legacy. Because the creative rules are always the same, you can come with your deepest heart's desire, and for 3 days, we know, and we've seen it, and you can look on our YouTube channel and hear the testimonials, you'll experience a shift. You will see something different about what's possible for you in one of those areas that matters deeply to you. And because it's so intense, Randy, there's only 20 spots available, so it is a small group. There's a lot of one-on-one time and attention from you and me on the very specific abundance games that people are playing, and we're bringing our best. We get better and better every time we have a retreat. We learn some great things from our retreat in May that we're bringing to the September retreat, and we really hope you can join us. We really hope you'll be one of those 20 spots.
So that's what we got for today. This is the end of this particular webinar. The next one is in 2 weeks. We have them every 2 weeks up until the event. We like people to watch these and participate with the activities we're asking them to do with these webinars to help get them ready for the retreat.
Yeah. So we hope to see you in September. It would be great to have you there. We would love to add our energy to yours and having the most breathtaking life you can possibly imagine.
Thanks, guys. Good night.